Good day, everyone, wherever you're calling from. It's my afternoon here in the UK. My name is Wendy Osborne, and I'm delighted on behalf of IAVE to welcome you to the second session of webinars, The Common Good, Creating a Sustainable Future Through Volunteering. Most of you will already know that IAVE's World Volunteer Conference for 2024 next year is in Busan in South Korea. And it is focusing on creating a sustainable future through volunteering. And our previous World Volunteer Conference in 2022 in Abu Dhabi looked at the common good. So for this session of 4 webinars, we're bringing and aligning those two themes together to reflect on what it is about the common good and how it can create that sustainable future through volunteering. And we have asked our guests, our presenters and our moderators who come with a range of experience and knowledge to join the webinar and present and then have a conversation with you as participants about what is being discussed. Last time we had a very interesting African perspective in relation to employer-supported volunteering. And this time round, we have an equally interesting presentation from a Caribbean perspective. So we are bringing the world to these webinars, and we are asking people to think about volunteering and how volunteering can help create that sustainable future that we all want. And wherever you are in the world, the one thing about a sustainable future is that it matters to each of us. And that's why having these different global voices is so important. If you have a comment or a question, please use the Q&A so that we can respond and join with you in the conversation. So please do that. Please tell us what you think or ask a question, and our moderator will pick that up. Now I'd like to move on to introduce our moderator for today's session, and that is Daniel Adugna. Daniel is the acting head of the Youth Division, Youth Policy and Inclusion Portfolio for the African Union Commission. And he's speaking to us, I think, from Ethiopia. Previous to this, he served as Programme Manager of the African Union Youth Volunteer Corps, a continental youth leadership programme which works with young African professionals through volunteerism and exchange across Africa. And he brings a wealth of experience and knowledge about volunteering, about his experience of volunteering with the African Union, and more importantly, a global perspective, for he actually serves currently as a board member on IAVE's board of directors. So Daniel, you're very welcome. Giselle Mendez from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, you're very welcome. And I now hand it over to the both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Good day, wherever you are. I see it's a truly international audience that we have today. I can see somebody joining us from Mexico, somebody from UAE. I myself am based in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Giselle is joining us from Trinidad and Tobago, I'm assuming. And this is truly an international and vibrant audience. Thank you so much. It's a truly pleasure and honor to moderate this session with you today on our series of the common good on volunteerism and its impact. So today our speaker, we already know, is Giselle Mendez. She's the founder and managing director of the Volunteer Center of Trinidad and Tobago. Giselle inspires the best minds to volunteer their time and tackle most of the pressing development challenges and mobilizes international networks and resources to escalate Caribbean volunteering. So here you have it. It is a perspective from the Caribbean side. What are the outstanding or what are the unique perspectives around volunteerism there? What are the unique drivers? What are some of the experiences? And most of us in the rest of the world is to know, what do we have in common? What can we learn from each other from these experiences that we have? So with that, and without any further delay, Giselle, kindly come in with your presentation. And then once we are done with the presentation, we can go into question and answer, particularly from the audience. If you have any questions for Giselle or for any questions on the issues, we're more than happy to take you on board. Thank you so much. And Giselle, over to you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Just a quick check. Are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you very well, Giselle.
Perfect, perfect. So it's morning in Trinidad. So good morning from the beautiful Trinidad and Tobago, and good day to everyone. It's always a pleasure to be part of these IAVE convenings, just to shed light on our learnings, our best practices, and also our challenges and our realities and contexts at the Volunteer Center of Trinidad and Tobago. As Daniel would have introduced, my name is Giselle Mendez. I represent an NGO in the Caribbean called the Volunteer Center of Trinidad and Tobago, or VCTT. We are a 10-year-old NGO with quite a small team that's undertaking some ambitious work, in my view. And my objective today is to share with you around some of that under a very important theme called A Caribbean Perspective on Volunteer Strategies for Sustainable Impact. So I look forward to sharing and discussing as we go further. Just to set some context, as some may be aware, and for those who are not aware, the Caribbean region is truly a melting pot of cultures and ethnicities with influences from indigenous peoples, African, Indian, European, Asian, and Middle Eastern populations. Our unique social, political, geographical, and environmental contexts has greatly influenced our volunteerism approaches and strategies. And in today's session, I will be sharing specifically from VCTT's context around some of the work that we do. So our work, what do we do at the Volunteer Center of Trinidad and Tobago? We say that our mission is quite simple, but very important. We exist to create a culture of care by placing people at the heart of positive change. We do this through connecting people to high impact projects and initiatives which support the Sustainable Development Goals. When our organization was initially founded and set up way back in 2012, we were a volunteer matching platform. And over the years, as we have had to adapt, the mandate of the organization has really expanded. And we did have to pivot our strategy based on volunteer feedback, community feedback, and feedback from the stakeholders that really benefit from the work of the Volunteer Center of Trinidad and Tobago. There are 4 main initiatives we currently have in our portfolio. The first is the Me to We mentorship program. This is a many-to-one mentorship model which supports secondary school students from 6 schools in Trinidad and Tobago with mentors who provide mentorship through different skills, background, and perspectives to these young people who participate in our mentorship program. We also have been developing a mentorship platform. This is a business-to-business mentorship platform, which essentially assists and supports organizations to provide effective mentorship programs. So organizations can subscribe to the mentorship platform and allow for their mentors to connect with young people that they are interested in supporting. We also have a home and community garden initiative called the Grown in East Port of Spain initiative. This was actually a 3-year project that is now coming to a close in 2023. Some really interesting learnings and challenges coming out of this specific project. And the 4th initiative in our portfolio is the Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Network. This network basically supports volunteer involving organizations from 8 Caribbean countries. This year, we're working to expand that network of partnerships in additional countries from the Caribbean. And all in all, we believe that our core work, these initiatives, really lend support to some key sustainable development goals, particularly around quality education, so SDG 4, zero hunger, SDG 2, and partnerships for the goals in terms of SDG 17. More specifically, as it pertains to the Sustainable Development Goals, because you will note that supporting the SDGs is actually wrapped into the mandate of the organization. Our work lends specific support to target 4.4 in quality education, target 4.7 of the SDGs. And as it pertains to partnerships for the goals, our work specifically lends support to target 17.3. And we will discuss some more of that as I go along. Before we get into the strategies for impactful volunteering, I really wanted to just spend some time discussing 2 aspects, 2 core aspects of the work that we do, specifically the Me Too We Mentorship Program and also the Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Network. So the Me Too We Mentorship Program, as mentioned, it is a many-to-one mentorship program. This was piloted during in 2020, so at the peak of COVID. And we spent 2 years really aggressively working through what a meaningful mentorship program model could look like for Trinidad and Tobago to really provide support to vulnerable and underserved young people who need immediate and urgent support. All of the mentors who form part of our program are volunteers with diverse backgrounds and skill sets, and those volunteers are recruited and selected based on the needs that have been identified and highlighted from the young people who participate in our program. Between 2022 to 2023, our program has expanded to support 50 young people from 6 secondary schools, again, through volunteer mentors. And we operate a hybrid model using online and offline sessions with varying levels of successes and challenges in both regards, right? Specifically as it pertains to the online engagements, we have, based on digital literacy and digital access, we have had to build in quite strong training mechanisms and resource mobilization strategies to plug both of those gaps to ensure that the online engagements are as effective and as optimal as they can be. And in terms of offline engagements, these engagements do offer and return high successes with the young people who are part of our program. But of course, they are costly to maintain because due to the severe socioeconomic stresses that a lot of the young people from our program come from, they aren't able to afford basic things like transportation to get to sessions, meals, and so forth. So a lot of those gaps also need to be bridged and supported. I also want to say in terms of this program, safeguarding and child protection has been our #1 priority in terms of ensuring that our recruitment processes are rigorous so that the engagements are safe, because these are vulnerable young people, and we want to ensure that the program is optimally set out to ensure that they can grow and learn in a safe environment. Based on the So at the end of the pilot of this program in 2021, we hired an independent evaluator to come in and provide very neutral, a neutral evaluation report on the outcomes of this program. And we really hit key indicators of success as it pertains to mentorship. Based on the outcomes of that pilot, we prioritize scaling the impact of our mentorship work with young people. And therein, we introduced the development of an online mentorship platform. This mentorship platform for us, and you're seeing some screenshots on the screen of the setup of the mentorship platform. And basically, in terms of the functionality, it allows mentors and mentees to engage in a safe online space. Again, safeguarding and child protection, as guided by our safeguarding and child protection policy, is our #1 priority, with all engagements flowing from the actual program and running through to the platform engagements as well. Other mentorship programs can also partner with us and subscribe to carry out their own mentorship programs. And we are exploring this as a sustainability mechanism for the program, because there is a subscription fee attached for mentorship programs who are interested in utilizing the platform. And the platform allows for the creation of organization profile, mentor profile, mentee profile, mentor recommendations for mentees, the hosting of a mentorship curriculum, the booking of mentorship sessions, whether it be one-to-one, many-to-one, and group sessions. So I do want to underscore that a key aspect of the platform is this facility, which it's not only about the one-on-one session with the young person and their volunteer mentor, but it also allows for additional volunteer mentors to connect to that young person, and also group sessions, or what we call inspirational sessions. I think a big plus for us in terms of the value that this platform and the utilization of technology to really support and enhance the work that we do, because we are a resource-strapped organization. We are primarily run on volunteers, is that it really allows for effective reporting of what is happening with the engagement. So we get we have a dashboard that's part of this platform that reflects the number of mentees that are participating in sessions, the number of mentors, the total sessions that have been completed, the total sessions that have been rejected, total sessions that have been canceled. And we are also provided a monthly scorecard and monthly efficiency rate, which tracks completed session, reviews from mentors and mentees, any flags raised, and as I mentioned, monthly sessions completed. So this specific aspect of our work in terms of the mentorship program, it is a big priority and focus for the organization. We say that we are really committed to undertaking the work that needs to be done. There are many young people in Trinidad and Tobago, and as I imagine in many of your countries, that need meaningful support. And this program is really set up to provide that type of support. Going on very quickly, the next initiative that I would like to share about in view of the theme for this presentation is around our Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Network. The network is really designed to escalate Caribbean volunteering as we work to remove the barriers to volunteering without borders in the Caribbean through 3 main avenues. Firstly, through increased access to capacity building opportunities for network members. We have been working very hard to ensure that all members of the CVX network are connected to opportunities like the IAVE network, like the IAVE community, that provides valuable opportunities for learning, capacity building, and enhancing the work that we are all working towards, that common good. Secondly, the network also works on the Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program. The Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program is a physical exchange where volunteers from network partner countries partake in a cultural and service exchange project in appointed host countries. To date, we have hosted 4 physical exchange programs in 2015 in St. Lucia, in 2016 in Trinidad and Tobago, in 2017 in Jamaica, and in 2019 in Suriname. I am happy to announce that this year, in 2023, in October, we will be officially announcing the host country for CVX 2024, and we will officially be relaunching that program in October of this year. So that's next month, and we are quite excited about that. In terms of partners that support our network and who are part of our network, partners include representatives from Curacao, Dominica, Guyana, Haiti, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Suriname, and of course, Trinidad and Tobago. And I really want to state a special mention to all our network partners who are at varying levels of their organizational development in terms of volunteer work, but who really show up and contribute in tremendously valuable ways and add value and strength to the network. The network is only strong because of the organizations who really partake and who really drive it. And we are very grateful for all of the contributions from the stated organizations. The other initiative that the network supports is Good Deeds Day Caribbean. VCTT is the regional coordinator for Good Deeds Day in the Caribbean. It is an initiative that we support annually, and we look forward to continued growth in the work that we do in that specific area. In terms of CVX, as mentioned, next month is quite a special month for us. We will have a convening of all partners in Trinidad and Tobago. This is taking place from the 21st to the 24th of October. We have 11 Caribbean countries that will be represented, and we will be working through a very special workshop to really assess and understand cross-border volunteering. As Caribbean countries, many of whom have tourism-based economies, what is the value of cross-border volunteering to our respective spaces? So we will be really interrogating and seeking to understand in a deeper way cross-border volunteering, and also assessing the relationship between volunteering and tourism. We will be looking to understand the best practices in cross-border volunteering and the opportunities for volunteering and tourism for our respective countries. One of the key outcomes we hope that will take place, and we will be working to ensure that it takes place, is crafting a financial model, a sustainable financial model for the Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program. So based on those 2 initiatives that I shared about, I wanted to just very quickly touch on some volunteer strategies for sustainable impact that we believe is critical to having that sustainable impact in the work that we do. The first that I want to mention is around long-term planning. So as volunteer involving agencies, and we have seen benefit of this at VCTT, is in terms of having that long perspective and taking more of a multi-year approach to the strategies and to our planning processes. We believe it really is a key best practice for having sustainable impact. Last weekend, we spent quite some time in a strategic planning session around our Me to We mentorship program and setting a 3-year plan for that program based on successes, of the program to date, but also based on real challenges and also learning points that came out of this specific cohort that we have undertaken this cycle with. Long-term planning, very critical. Resource mobilization. So of course, not just in kind, not just financial resources, but also in-kind resources. Another key area for us to look at in our strategies for sustainable impact. Community engagement. VCTT really believes in meaningful engagement of stakeholders from the communities that we serve in our design and program implementation processes. Leaders from respective communities, community members, community stakeholders, they know better than anyone else the nuances and intricacies of their respective communities and really lend value in us designing programs that are much more effective and have greater impact as opposed to us coming in and operating without that stakeholder buy-in to our design and implementation processes. Capacity building, always quite a big buzzword that we throw around quite a bit in the development space, but always very important for us to continue to think about how do we continue to do the work that we do in a sustainable way, and how do we build our capacity to achieve that. Skills-based volunteering. Specifically our mentorship work, it focuses heavily on engaging mentors based on the identified needs of mentees and recruiting mentors who have the required skills and experience to really support in those targeted and identified need areas. Technology. Now, I do want to say that even though we aren't technology experts at VCTT, we are really tackling head-on the possibilities that technology can bring and mean for an organization like ours, so that we can be more effective and efficient in the delivery of our volunteer work. Volunteer engagement and retention. This is another important one. VCTT's projects are all delivered by a steering committee of experts, volunteer experts who come together from various, from private, public, and the NGO space to lend their ideas and skills to the work that we do. And for us, we have realized that we have had to really work in a system to really better organize and structure how skilled volunteers who form part of those steering committee are contributing to the oversight and delivery of our very important projects. Sometimes volunteers' commitments can change based on different developments in people's lives, and we have had to better organize and structure how those steering committees are being managed, and the minimum commitment that volunteers are being asked to commit to ensure that projects can be sustained with our current management structures, which are fully managed by volunteer steering committees. Collaboration. Collaboration is key and critical for us, especially as our team is run predominantly by volunteers. We really prioritize collaborating around our strengths. So VCTT is very clear on what our area of expertise and strengths are. And we really engage additional partnerships around our areas of weakness or our areas where we aren't as strong. So collaboration is critical in terms of working towards that sustainable impact. Monitoring, evaluation, and learning. This is another big area, and I add learning here because all our stories of impact are not always success stories. It does include stumbling, it does include failure at times. And I think for us, what we have realized is the importance of ensuring that there's documentation, not just data collection around impact, but clear documentation around learnings, around failures, around stumbling, because other organizations, other stakeholders who may be interested in undertaking work similar to us or who are already involved can also learn and benefit from that process. Adaptability. This is a really big one. The current cohort that we support in our mentorship program in terms of young people coming out of COVID versus young people pre-COVID, it's really two different cohorts that we are supporting, and there are increased challenges because of increased vulnerabilities. So our adaptability processes this cycle have had to really be vigorous while we maintain a hybrid model of online and offline engagements for our mentorship program. We've had to increase offline engagements, again, due to challenges and limitations around digital literacy. So adaptability is key. The other thing I want to add very quickly, even though it's not mentioned on the screen, is around accountability. Accountability must be stated as a critical success factor for ensuring sustainable impact in our strategies. Many organizations are donor funded, and even though we may take for granted that organizations are accountable and have effective governance processes, I think it is important to state that clear and strong accountability mechanisms for the work that we do, for funding that is received, is also very critical. So just to wrap up on that note, current and future priorities. So locally, in terms of Trinidad and Tobago, we will continue to focus on our operational framework, our resource mobilization and sustainability processes. We will also work to deepen our data collection and analysis of our project-based work. This is online and offline. And we will continue to work to deepen our alignment and support of Agenda 2030, even though this is an area that is built into our mission and has been a focus from the start. And we continue to be open to learning about new ways and mechanisms to do this. And from a Caribbean perspective, we will continue to prioritize connecting all CVX partner organizations to the IAVE network. In 2022, we had 14 delegates from 6 countries in attendance for the World Volunteer Conference. And that was a huge win for us in terms of the region, in terms of having that sort of regional representation to be part of that global forum. Also continuing to work on our operational plan and expansion of the CVX Secretariat. As mentioned on a local context, that data collection and analysis, volunteerism research has also been prioritized from our network team as an area that we do want to continue to, that we want to strengthen and do deeper work around. And similarly, on a regional level for our network, deepening our alignment and support of Agenda 2030. And for us, what all of this really sums to in terms of volunteering, the theme, volunteering for the common good, is the strength of the collective from a me to we in terms of from a local program perspective, and even for the Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program, it really speaks to on both ends, the strength of the collective in terms of addressing and tackling the very critical challenges that are facing us on a local level and on a regional level. And we are focusing on building our structures and systems that can help us do that more efficiently and more effectively. Okay, so on that note, thank you very much for the opportunity to share about the work of VCTT, and feel free to follow and engage with any of our social media pages for further information.
Thank you so much, Giselle, and really, really congratulations for all the work you are doing in uplifting and bringing volunteerism to the young people of Trinidad and Tobago. Definitely the case studies are quite inspiring and a lot of learning to be had there. Maybe let's look first into some of the questions that we have from our participants. So kindly to ask any of you who have questions specifically to any aspect of what Giselle has presented, please feel free to type it out in the question and answer section, and Giselle would address them. But maybe to kickstart our conversation, Giselle, let me ask you broadly for us to understand those who are not in that region or familiar with Trinidad and Tobago and the like. How do you perceive the overall volunteerism landscape in the Caribbean and specifically in Trinidad and Tobago, mainly looking at like, is there a national policy on volunteerism? Is there, let's say, a government body, maybe a ministry or a department that looks into issues of volunteerism? Is there a budget that is allocated to this kind of activities? Or are you all alone in this sector as civil society dealing with all this, maybe to help us also contextualize where volunteerism falls broadly and how you define your activities, or is it simply civil society activity? Maybe to give us that context, and then we can take a few questions from our audience. So Giselle, over to you.
Sure. Well, specifically in Trinidad and Tobago, actually, let me start in the Caribbean. We have quite a healthy and robust volunteering ecosystem that has really been evolving and growing over the past decades. Because most of the Caribbean constitutes islands, and our vulnerability in terms of our geographical locations and our vulnerabilities to natural disasters, a lot of volunteer efforts at times focuses on disaster preparedness and response mechanisms. So you'd see a lot of agencies really set up and coordinated to mobilize, and even policies in respective countries to mobilize and support in those specific areas. In Trinidad and Tobago, recently, well, with the onset of our current government, that is the People's National Movement, they actually implemented the first Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, right? So that is new. And when this ministry was installed, they did state that it is a priority to really focus on developing a mechanism or a policy around national service. That has yet to be implemented because there's current focus of that ministry in terms of really reviving and reigniting our local youth councils. So on a broader NGO scale, in terms of NGOs in Trinidad and Tobago, as in many other countries, many of these NGOs are run and the backbone of these NGOs are volunteers. Persons who give of their time and really donate their skill sets towards the respective causes that various NGOs in Trinidad and Tobago are addressing. I think a big part of the challenge around it is in terms of the professionalizing of the volunteer space. So when I say that, I speak about having adequate resources for this third sector to adequately administer the work that we are undertaking. And those causes can run from environmental issues to issues around health. And of course, at VCTT, it's specifically working on volunteering because the funding landscape is so competitive. And there's this slate of private sector organizations who do contribute, and contributions and the way private sector companies are contributing has evolved, especially post-COVID, but there's still a long way for us to go in terms of adequate resourcing and support for this third sector that is heavily driven and depends heavily on volunteers. And to go back to your question in terms of national policy, there currently isn't a national policy dedicated to volunteering and the development of volunteerism. So we see what can possibly come out of the Ministry of Youth and National Service, but that seems to be a long way off. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Giselle, and definitely a long way of battle still is ahead to do some work in that regard. So we have a question from Raul, and I think you started touching on that in your last part where you started talking about professionalizing of volunteerism and some of the challenges, because Raul Sanchez is asking us, what are, by your point of view, the biggest challenges to develop volunteers in Caribbean countries, right? Then we have Eli Rivas, who is asking you about cross-border volunteering as her area of interest, and she's interested about the challenges and the terms of funding and recruitment for cross-border volunteerism in your context, of course. And we also have question from Ragged Osama, who is specifically asking about the Caribbean Regional Conference that's happening next month in October, and how one could participate or register for it. So let's start with those three questions, and then we can come back for more.
Sure. I want to tackle the first one in terms of the biggest challenges. And yes, I did make mention of it, but this is really important, and it's something I'm super passionate about, the professionalizing of the work that we do. So where is the boundary, or what are the perimeters for when volunteer work actually requires resources for staffing to further develop and grow the work that is being undertaken? And I'll say it like this. For many of the partner organizations that I listed as part of our CVX network, most of those organizations are being led by persons who have their, what I will call, a full-time private or public sector job. And then this NGO work is that part-time initiative or that passion undertaking. That is problematic from a sustainability perspective, because in order to adequately do justice to the work that is required for volunteer development, there comes a point where we require staff, right? Staffing, paid staff, to be able to undertake the work in a meaningful way, because things like volunteer burnout, right, becomes a real factor when you have team members straddling between their full-time opportunities and also leading organizations that are doing very serious work. We have a representative from another country who is operating on a national scale. Thousands of volunteers are involved in her line of work, and well, she's currently not employed, and is also undertaking this strictly as a volunteer without any compensation. So part of our lobbying and advocacy at VCTT in terms of coordinating this network of volunteers is also for further resourcing of the administrators of this volunteer work, so that we could lend better focus to this work. Yes, right. So that's a big area of a challenge area that we are still tackling and addressing as a Caribbean community in terms of as a team of partners, as well as at VCTT. In terms of I think the second question was around the recruitment of cross-border volunteers, right? The Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program. That's the second question, right? So, right, good. So how CVX works is each of the country leaders who form part of the CVX network promote the specific the specific volunteer project in their respective countries, and interested volunteers from those countries can sign up and register to volunteer. Those volunteers will be coordinated and organized by the host country, who are coordinating the cultural exchange and service project. And that volunteer exchange program usually takes place from about 5 to 7 days across a 5 to 7 day period in the respective host country, right? So once we relaunch in October, and we announce the host country, once the project within that host country has been confirmed, there will be a call for volunteer applications, and we welcome persons who are also people who are also not from within the Caribbean region to also register to partake in the Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program. It is absolutely open for all, right? Did I miss another question, Daniel? The other question?
There was a question about participating in the upcoming
regional conference. Yes.
Right.
So for interested persons who, for anyone who is interested in that regional conference, please, you can reach out to me at gmendez@vctt.org, gmendez@vctt.org, and I will provide further information on how you can participate in that conference. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry for the echo. Thank you so much.
Hello? 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 Okay, I'm not sure if this is on my end.
I think we may have lost Daniel. Giselle, I think I'm not quite sure what has happened there, but there was an additional question from Simone, and it was asking, is there a any so-called national volunteering award in Trinidad and Tobago, or any other island nations or at regional level? You know, I suppose that would be a recognition and celebration award we're talking about.
Yes, great question. So interestingly, VCTT, we formally hosted an annual volunteer award ceremony. Now, this award ceremony was specifically focused on VCTT volunteers who partake in our projects and rewarding and recognizing them for their work. On a wider national scale, there is a service award that is provided to professionals from the NGO community who contribute service that meets a specific criteria. Now, this is a national government award. And the last one actually took place yesterday, which is over the weekend, which is when we celebrated Republic Day, right? So to answer your question, there is an award in Trinidad and Tobago, and also VCTT formally coordinated an award, a reward and recognition award exercise for our volunteers. Yes.
Thank you. And in addition to the
Wendy,
question,
I'm back.
oh, sorry, sorry.
Ah.
I'll just ask this other question of Giselle.
Please go ahead.
So it was just Giselle. They were asking about language. I mean, this is you know, a cross-network volunteering opportunity, and so we're asking about how do you work through the language and the language barriers that there may be in terms of making it, I suppose, accessible for all.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this comment. This has been an area that we have noted as a gap in our current iteration, in terms of the current model iteration of the Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program. I did mention that as we go into the conference that's taking place next month, we will be seeking to redesign and come up with a truly relevant, right, model for the CVX program. This is an area that must be addressed. It actually was initially highlighted and discussion brought about from our Haitian partner. Due to the from our Haitian partner. So this is going to be an area that we will be looking at for the conference. Currently, in terms of the 4 CVX exchanges that we formally hosted, they were within predominantly English-speaking countries, and we had only English-speaking volunteers partake in those. We must really address that for the program to be truly relevant and able to call itself a Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program. So thank you for that. It's a gap in the program, and we will be looking to address it.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the microphone issue I was experiencing earlier. I didn't realize my mic was off. I had to switch quickly to another device. So sorry for that. And thank you for your support and patience. Thank you for taking us through all the answers, Giselle, and thank you for the questions, dear participants. I do see just a few questions that are outstanding. I think it's a follow-up to the previous questions, like Ragda is mentioning what is the name of the account. I'm assuming it's in relation to your email account. I don't know if that's answered already, about NGOs, how they can participate in the CVX. And lastly, we have an anonymous attendee asking particularly with the interest of the skills-based volunteer experience, and particularly how do we facilitate skills-based volunteering? I think it built on the first case you mentioned around the mentorship programs. And then also how do volunteers share the skills and support NGOs? Maybe building on that, Giselle, I also have a question. I was particularly interested in the area where you mentioned how there is a volunteer burnout and volunteer fatigue if we don't pay attention to the welfare of the volunteers as well. Yes, because we did talk about addressing SDGs through the work of the volunteers. We did describe that the audits have identified very much value addition and feedback, but when it comes to the volunteers themselves, how is the experience perceived by the volunteers themselves in terms of then the learning that they receive, the value add, or does it open any perspectives in terms of career opportunities? How is the volunteerism then perceived by the volunteer side? Maybe if you can look at those, and then I think we will be heading towards the top of our allocated time.
Yeah. So just to go back, in terms of the person who was asking for my contact, and I also see someone stating that cross-border volunteering is their area of professional interest. I'll just repeat my contact again. It's G Mendez, GMENDEZ at VCTT.org. Please get in contact. We are really committed to getting this right as we develop as we redesign this model for our Caribbean Volunteer Exchange Program. So if there are any experts, specialists, organizations who would like to share about their experiences as well in terms of with cross-border volunteering, please do get in touch with me. We would love to chat with you and learn from your experiences and also share further about our experiences as we work to redesign our model. Going back to, I think you mentioned the skills-based volunteering. So as I would have highlighted in my presentation, VCTT at present is a project-based organization. We have very clear focus areas of work around key projects. So I did make mention of the mentorship program. The other project where skills-based volunteering was engaged is our food security project called Grown in East Port of Spain. For that project, we had also recruited what we called agri-mentors. So that project, the purpose of that project is really around enabling and increasing food security and livelihood development in a specific community in Trinidad and Tobago called East Port of Spain. The beneficiaries were for the most part, young people from across the communities. And for many of them, it was their first time getting involved in agriculture and farming. So to support our program implementation plan, we actually included and expanded to include the recruitment of agricultural mentors. So farmers who wanted to give back, so persons who were skilled in growing food, who wanted to give back to young people, they were able to volunteer in that specific area as well, right? Based on their background and experiences. And the last thing I think you mentioned, Danielle, was around, we were talking about the volunteer experience. The last thing I want to say, because I do see us running short on time, is that for us, again, we have had to better organize how we manage the volunteer team that supports with the administration of the project. I think in another forum that I was speaking, another IAVE forum, I was discussing that we have found we needed to also implement better support systems for our volunteers as well, which included things like mental health support, because when you're working with vulnerable young people, you also need a space where you can share, exchange, and also sometimes get new tools to adequately provide support to that young person. So it's providing support to volunteers, putting better systems and structures in place to manage volunteers who are administering the work. So what we are currently putting in place is a terms of reference that stipulates a minimum term of commitment, because if you're a mentor and you're working with a young person, it's very difficult if you fall off halfway through the program, despite our recruitment processes. So we're really trying to streamline better support for volunteers, but also better mechanisms to manage volunteers. I think those were all the questions.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Giselle. Yes, you did answer all the questions that we had. And thank you so much for the time and taking us through everything in terms of what Caribbean volunteer networks are doing. This is really great learning and exchange by itself for all of us, particularly those of us not from the region, to understand how are some of these things working. I think on many aspects, particularly on issues like funding and the like, I think we're all in the same boat. For many of organizations, these are some of the similar challenges we all face all over, but also carrying on support and making sure our volunteers do benefit, we don't have burnout. I think these are a few of the extreme and good case learnings that we have taken from you today, and particularly how you touch a lot on young people and volunteerism being a mechanism to engage young people, and also addressing even issues around gender and youth participation. I think that has been an interesting impact, whether intended or unintended. I think these are immediate spillovers of volunteerism. So thank you for that, and we have all learned a lot. So thank you so much, Giselle. Please, a round of applause to Giselle wherever you are, virtually and physically. Thank you so much for that. So in continuation of our series on the Common Good series of presentations, we do have Common Good Part 3 that is going to happen on October 10th, similar time, 9 to 10 EDT, that's GMT -4. There we're going to have Dr. Bianca Fadel, who is a research fellow in the Center for Global Development at the University of North Cumbria at the UK. And then on November 7, we have part 4 of the Common Good presentations, where we have Colin Rogers, who is the Global Head of Disaster Preparedness and Response for Plan International. So stay tuned with us, and thank you all for participating wherever you are, and stay tuned to our next series. So with that, allow me maybe to hear one last word from Wendy, if we have any parting words from your side in terms of a few more.
No, thank you. Just a very big thanks to you, Danielle, and to Giselle particularly, because there was a wealth of information there, and it fit exactly in what we were looking for. To share that global experience, and it resonates. It resonates, I know, with you, Daniel, in Africa. It resonates with the participants from across the world that we had today. It resonates in my own part of the world, in the United Kingdom. So, you know, this exchange of global information and expertise and knowledge is so very important. And I'm delighted, and I found all of it extremely interesting, and I'm sure all our participants did. So thank you to you both, and thank you to our participants today.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Everyone.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.